Hello return shoot rats and welcome back to the last video. So the show where I talk to interesting people about their favorite freaking movies. And I do so in the style of an old school video store rental combo. Yes, we are accessing nostalgia on this show. My name is Alexei Toliopoulos and joining me on the show today, the cool person in question talking about some of their favorite movies is actually one of my favorite filmmakers, the master of modern horror. It is Leigh Whannell. You know him from Saw. He co-wrote. He's in those movies as well. He also wrote and directed Upgrade, which I think is one of the coolest freaking movies in the last few years. Invisible Man, one of the best horrors in the last few years. And now he's here reinventing another Universal monster classic with Wolfman. I had the pleasure of hosting the Sydney premiere of Wolfman in the full horrifying scope of IMAX cinema and the immersive, terrifying sound as well. And I'll say this, it's grotty. It's a really gross body horror werewolf film. He brings that body horror back into lycanthropic nightmares with Wolfman. I think you'll have a blast with it. If you don't know what Wolfman is, it is out in cinemas right now and it is basically a return home. It is Christopher Abbott returning back to his family home with his new family, and there is something lurking out there in the night. There's a predator on the loose. I won't say what it is, but I will say it's not the predator. It's not a crossing of franchises, but there's something out there. I won't say what it is, but the movie is called Wolfman. That might be hint enough for you. The only person more excited to have Leigh Whannell on the podcast than me is someone who I found out is a bigger Leigh Whannell superfan. Producer M, how you doing? You're shaking, you're quivering.
I cannot believe.
You're stuttering.
I can't even get through the sentence.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan. I was so
You're a horror head, dude.
I do. It's my favorite genre, hands down. I'm a grotty girl, actually.
You're grotty.
Yeah.
Let it be known you're a grot star.
I'm gross.
And you were really excited about one movie in particular of Leigh's.
Yes, I'm a huge Saw fan, but the film that I was just so excited about is a film called Dead Silence. It's from 2007. Leigh wrote it, and it changed everything for me. It almost introduced horror to me in some ways, because I remember specifically, I was 2007, was I 15 when that came out? I remember.
We know your age now.
Damn it. I went to the video store. I picked out this spooky looking film. It's
a mannequin on the cover, right? Not a mannequin.
Ventriloquist doll.
Thank you.
It is, well, kind of, and I'll let the audience watch the movie to get more of that, but it's this very creepy looking cover. I was with my cousin and sister. We wanted to watch a film. We picked this one out, and it just opened my mind to what horror films could be. Classic, scary, scare your pants off horror film.
Oh my God.
I love it. And I rewatched it in preparation for meeting.
Seeing him in person.
For meeting. It's ironic it's called Dead Silence because I can't shut up about it. But I absolutely love it. I've seen it 10 times, so it was fun to rewatch. And the man did not disappoint. He was amazing.
Yeah, I've been so excited for this.
Yeah.
Because it's just, I think we found out we're getting him towards the end of last year.
Yes.
This is actually our first recording back in the new year. We had a few in the tank that we saved up. I did those little remote records with Kate Jinx talking about our favorite films of the year for 2024. But this is our first one back, and it feels like what a great way to rechristen it, but also so terrifying for me. Well, truly, this guy's a super cinephile. He used to review movies before he started making them, and I've been a fan of him for basically since I can remember movies. I've always been a fan of him from his early days before making them, his acting days, and now his full-fledged modern master of horror days. Yeah, so truly, I've been so stoked about this whole week. And I would say the pressure is upon me because I'm sending him out in the horror section. He's going to be exploring the darkness on this episode, talking about some of his favorite horror films, films that may have had an inspiration on Wolfman, films that inspired that. So I would say that it was really hard trying to come up with a movie that he has not seen before. I've been stressing about it. I've gone through many different things. I've gone through deep and dark channels. So the stakes are high. Actually, Yeah, it's always scary when we get a movie maker on here, filmmaker, because I'm like, I don't know.
I know, and
especially when they're older than me, I'm like, you've had a decade more to explore than I have, mate. I don't know. I'm a chump.
And if you can believe it, you seem so cool, calm, and collected at the best of times, but behind the scenes, you're sweating, you're crying, you're shivering with fear.
Not just because it's summer and my sunblock melts into my eye. Not just because of that. But if you want to do what we do on this podcast, if you want a bespoke, customized recommendation from me based on your taste, just like Leigh's going to get on this podcast, all you need to do is give us a review on Apple Podcasts, leave us a comment on the YouTube video if you're watching this on YouTube right now, or comment on the Spotify episode, hit us up on the socials on a comment with your new release favorite, your 2 weekly choices, and then I'll give you a custom recommendation. You've got one here, Em. What have we got?
I do. This is from Hairy Beast 20.
Oh my God, that's perfect for the Wolfman episode.
Oh my God.
Oh my God, dude.
Wolfman.
This is a Wolfman himself.
This is perfect. Okay, so Hairy Beast 20 says Sexy Lexi, which I really think we should.
He likes his own hairy beast then, it sounds like.
Celluloid Knight and protector of the hallowed halls of the last video store.
Wow, they are hallowed.
The greatest.
And they're hollow as well, yeah. They're green screen.
Yes. The greatest bastion of all things cinema.
Wow. The greatest bastion in cinema, Bastian Balthazar Barks from Neverending Story, brother, but I'll take second place.
Wow. This guy should come right for us.
I think so.
A true gentleman and scholar delivering quality guests and delectable staff picks 5 out of 5 stars.
Wow, thank you, brother. Gentleman and scholar, I think, always makes me laugh. It's such a funny thing to call someone.
My rental combo would be a new release of Perfect Days.
Far out. That's like top 5 of me for the last few years. Love that film.
And weekly picks of Paris, Texas.
Another Wim Wenders film.
Yes, he says, I know. 2 vendors, can't believe you met him. And The Wages of Fear, 1953. Keep up the good work.
Oh, great. Wages of Fear as well. The remake, Wages of Fear Sorcerer, also fantastic. But how about this? You got 2 Wenders. Let me give you a third, because I love Wim Wenders. This is one called Until the End of the World, which is a science fiction film from Wim Wenders. A lot of it filmed here in Australia. Ernie Dingo is in it as well. Ooh. But it's kind of like Wenders was like the king of road movies. He made like Paris, Texas, other road movies. But then what he wanted to do with Until the End of the World was like, how do you do a road movie with a bit of a science fiction element to it? So it's Sam Neill, it's William Hurt. There's just been this new restoration of his original preferred cut, which is like 3 hours long. So, oh no, it's like 5 hours long or something. Like, it's long. The theatrical version is okay, but the director's version is amazing, amazing, amazing film. But the coolest thing he did, he reached out to all these bands and was like, what do you think your music is going to be like in 15, 20 years? And got them to make songs. So there's a U2 song on there, Until the End of the World. Oh. There's a Talking Heads song on there. God, which one is it? Sax and violins, I think.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's really cool.
I'm going to watch this.
It's 5 hours, mate. Carve a day out where you can do it, but it's worth it. Beautiful film. Well, let us hold no further ado. Let's get into our chat with Leigh Whannell, one of my favorites. We're talking Wolfman. We're talking his favorite horror films. And then I'm going to give him a recommendation based on his taste. Let's do it.
The last video store.
Well, Leigh, thank you for joining out here to the last video store. It has been a dream to get you on.
Oh well, I'm glad. It's my dream to be in a video store that's still remaining. I can't find any.
Well, take me back, mate. What was your favorite video store growing up? Did you have any of those great discoveries in the video store?
I mean, many great discoveries. Growing up, okay, so I grew up in the outer suburbs of Melbourne, and it was pre-Blockbuster. That wasn't a thing that took hold in Australia.
Yeah.
By the time it got here, it was it wasn't. In the US, you often hear people when they get nostalgic about video stores.
Waxing lyrical about the cold exteriors of a Blockbuster.
Yeah, Blockbuster. Yeah. So my video store experience being from Australia, was more the independently owned video stores.
That's what I want to hear. That's
That
what
era,
I love.
yeah. So my favorite growing up, there was one called Videorama, which was in. They were always a pun on video. You know, it was Video Busters, Videorama, which was in Scoresby. It's no longer there. It hasn't been there for a long time. But it was my local.
The memories are still there.
The memories are still there,
The
you know.
foundations are still locked in all those memories.
Exactly. Now, it was in the outer suburbs of Melbourne, so it wasn't the most well-stocked video store, and it wasn't staffed by hardcore cinephiles. So that's the one from my adolescence and childhood. If you're asking about favorite video store of all time, I'll give that award to Video Busters on Smith Street in Collingwood.
Yeah. We've
And
heard
also-
a lot about Video Busters.
Well, it was huge. It was
Yeah.
the size of a medium-sized supermarket. And it was one of the first video stores I ever went into that had sections by director. So the De Palma films and, or the Kurosawa. And then it was heaven for a movie lover. But I'm going to split that award also with Real Video, which was High Street, Northcote. Smaller video store, but they were incredible.
Wow.
They're also no longer. They held out for quite a while.
Yeah.
I was living in LA when that closed down, and I saw their closing down party on Facebook. I think
Yeah.
there was a video, and I still remember the sign. It was like painted on the front. Real had slime dripping off it in green letters.
Beautiful.
And
Green slime, what is more cinematic than
what's
that?
more cinematic? So yeah, Videorama, Video Busters, Real Video.
Wow, that's the journey. That's your cinephile education through those three
Absolutely.
beautiful institutions. We pay respect to them.
Absolutely.
Well, Leigh, I've truly wanted to talk to you about horror for so long. I've been a fan of yours for so long. So forgive me if I'm shivering at any point, but what we really want to do with you today is we want to send you out into the horror film section, pick out a new release film, which you may have had some part of, and then two all-time favorites. Maybe they inspired your film, and then the stakes will be on my end. I will have to recommend you a master of modern horror, maybe a film that you've never seen before. And so I actually am nervous. I am nervous.
Okay, cool.
And if I fail you, I don't know, maybe you have to torture me in some way. Put me in some sort of device.
We'll think of something. We have many tools here. I mean, I could beat you to death with a copy of Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yes, okay. That's a worthy way for me to go. I do believe that if you open that one up, our faces will melt. So be careful with how you handle that tape.
I mean, this is what it was all about, wasn't it? You had to be drawn in by the cover.
Yeah, that's it. Your first interaction with a film, your first relationship with a film used to begin with looking at the art.
And they were all lined up. CIC, God, that was obviously an Australian distribution company because I would see that on every second video.
With that little link, we should get matching tattoos of that logo.
The CIC, I swear to God. Of course, when you look at it back then, you think it's a worldwide thing. And now I'm realizing it was just an Australia thing.
I'm seeing the logo forming on the screen in my head. I go, wow, I do remember. I remember the sound that went along with it now.
Yes.
Well, anyway, Leigh, I'm going to send you out. Head over to the horror session, come back with your picks, and we'll get stuck into it.
New release.
Well, you're here with a new release film, a film that I was honoured to host the premiere of here in Sydney. And now we're going to host the Batuta premiere tonight in our little garage cinema here.
Yes,
we're going to bring everyone in.
Okay.
But it is your new film, Wolfman.
Horror.
I would love to begin talking about, I think what you did so well with Invisible Man is finding a way to update that film, or dare I say upgrade that film to the modern contemporary setting. What lessons you take from that film to bring on a contemporary version of Wolfman? Because it's such a myth that's been around for so long, since 1941, that original film.
I think if there was anything I took from Invisible Man, it was really that idea of modernizing it and not being too afraid of the mythology or the old character, to just, dragging it into the current era and reshaping it a little bit, not rewriting the whole thing, keeping the essence of what makes it great, but just recontextualizing it for our time. People seem to respond to that with Invisible Man, and not everybody movies, as you know, as you may have heard.
They are subjective.
They are
I've heard.
subjective.
That's something
exactly.
I believe in.
I know a guy who doesn't like No Country for Old Men, and I'm like, you're wrong about this.
That one's an objective.
Yeah, that's objective. But so you're not going to please everybody, but I feel like people generally did respond to this idea of modernizing it. So I took that to this movie.
Yeah. What were those core elements from the original that you felt were necessary to stay? Because for me, watching it, there were just a few little instances that hit me, go, oh, that feels like the original. But I guess the key one is returning somewhere.
Yeah, going home. It's the transformation. That's the key element of a werewolf film that is so important, is the transformation. And as long as I felt like I had honored that and committed to it, then I felt like I was doing a good job. I mean, there's so many versions of a werewolf movie you can do. I read a werewolf movie fairly recently that was a comedic take. It was like the Albert Brooks version.
Wow.
So, it's really about how you want to approach it. So knowing that people had taken so many different approaches over the years, from animated films to comedies to teen movies, knowing that was all behind me made me feel like I did have some freedom with certain things,
I think let's get into that transformation, because this one, I really felt that you brought the idea of body horror, like the idea of body changing, back into the werewolf genre. Because really, it's not something you often associate with werewolf genre, but you really should, because it's about the body transforming to something completely foreign. Can you talk about what your thought was for that transformation, and maybe even we'll continue talking about the movement as well?
It was really just thinking, what hasn't been done? What haven't I seen in this regard? That's always a good place for me to start. Certainly with Invisible Man, when you're dealing with a character that has been depicted many times. If you're writing an original film, like with Upgrade, I'm still thinking about originality and how I can tweak it, but I'm starting from scratch. There's no IP. You're just molding clay, just building something. When you're dealing with an iconic character like this, you do need to keep in mind what's been done before. And so I just had this idea of, what if I slowed it down and treated this more like a disease, and still gave the audience what they wanted, but that felt like a unique way in. And the perspective shifting, the audio-visual aspects of this seemed very exciting to me. Once I locked into that, I was like, I've got a movie here. There has to be a moment when you're writing where you say, this is a movie. This is a movie that needs to exist.
Like your eureka moment.
Yeah, I've had movies before where I've been intrigued by the idea. I've started writing it, but for some reason I never had that eureka moment of this has to exist. And they peter out. Movies have a natural way, I think, sometimes of running out of energy. And that's happened on some movies that I've started writing, and they're sitting half finished on the hard drive.
Yeah.
This felt like it was unique enough to justify its existence.
Well, it really is, because it's like this whole new sonic identity that kind of evolves over this movie. Because I first took note of how atmospheric the forest feels. You really do feel like there's something out there that you don't understand. And that's just kind of deep buried in the atmospheric sound design of, I guess, your bass track. But then when we shift into the kind of werewolf POV or the creature POV, you play with sound in such an interesting way, where the way the film sounds changes. You're hearing so many different parts of the atmosphere that weren't present before, or maybe were buried present. Can you talk about finding that sound design, and also the visual aspect of that POV was something that knocked me out as well?
Oh, great. Well, thanks for saying that. Yeah. I mean, the sound design, I love sound design. It's something I've loved for a long time. The film school that I went to in Melbourne, the primary teacher who was teaching film was more obsessed with film sound than visuals. Wow. He would talk to us about the sound design of movies. I remember us talking about Colours, that film, the Sean Penn film that Dennis Hopper directed from 1989, maybe?
I think
88.
So. Yeah.
He would talk about the sound design of mainly genre films. We weren't talking about the sound design of The Searchers or Last Year at Marienbad. We were talking about the sound design for Assault on Precinct 13 and The Terminator, and just really and he awoke in me this real interest in film sound. And so it's always been something I've thought about. And with this movie, I was writing it into the screenplay. I've never done that before, where I was depicting or transcribing the sound of the movie in the action description. That's how important it was to me, the sound design for this film. So, yeah, it felt, for some reason, this movie felt like a very sound-driven film.
Yeah, I mean, it translates that and it communicates that to the audience so well. I also want to talk about like the prosthetics, because it's Arjen Tuchen who does the
Arjen,
prosthetics.
yes, he is from Holland originally,
Yeah.
and he was so obsessed. He showed me a photo of him at like age 9 building his own life-size Terminator.
Wow.
In the backyard, and he was so talented as a kid. He used to write letters to makeup artists. He wrote a letter to Dick Smith, the famous makeup artist who did The Exorcist.
Yeah.
And Dick Smith said, "Come over, I'll sponsor you."
No way.
So he came over to the US as pretty young, I think 18 years old, was sponsored to work.
God, he's like a Holland runaway.
Yeah, he worked under the tutelage of Dick Smith, then Stan Winston,
Wow.
then Rick Baker.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so he was a
Those are the big
kid.
three.
I know, and he's learning from these guys.
Yeah.
And he's still friends with Rick Baker. It's funny, there's a neighborhood in Los Angeles where a friend of mine lives called Toluca Lake. It's right near, it's in the valley, which
Yeah.
you may have heard of.
Oh, of course.
It's in the valley.
I've even ventured into the valley myself.
Exactly. It's right in in between Universal Studios and Warner Brothers. And it's this, cute little suburban neighborhood, but on Halloween they go crazy. They're known for it. And one of my friends lives there. So there's almost too many people on the streets. It feels like New Year's Eve or something, but we go there and people, I'm not talking about people putting a few skeletons up in their front yard here. I'm talking about
Real bodies.
animatronics, light shows, thousands of dollars worth.
Wow.
Like each house is competing with the next. And so it's very fun. We take the kids trick-or-treating. One of the houses in this neighborhood is owned by Rick Baker.
Oh my gosh.
And so he puts on a show. You go in. This year he did Planet of the Apes.
Wow.
And it was full, I'm talking like exact makeup, just these people running around. There's a line down the block, all these people queuing up to get in and see his little show that he puts on.
Wow.
And so Arjen hangs out with Rick,
Gosh.
He's always talking to him. When he took on the job of doing Wolfman with me, Rick Baker loaned him the original makeup case that Jack Pierce used on the original Wolfman. It's a wooden makeup case, and it's not behind glass. It's not in a container. It's sitting there. And I went into Arjen's workshop, and I was looking at it. We opened it up, and there was an original typed call sheet from Bride of Frankenstein sitting there. It felt like in great condition. Like basically the smell of it. It was pretty incredible to be inhaling this artifact from that time. So
James Whale's essence.
I know. It
the
was
ghost of Whale pouring out of
exactly.
that
It was from the
case.
1930s. It smelled. It was a
It smelled
mixture
like
of
the 1930s.
Yeah, it was a mixture of tobacco, asbestos, and racism. I'm not sure what it was, but it was coming out of this wood, and these paints, they were all in there. And
wow.
he said he wanted it there in the room with him for inspiration when he
my
was doing
gosh.
the makeup. And so the spirit of these old films that Arjen and I revere so much was in the movie. However, our look for the Wolfman, we wanted it to feel very new and modern. And
Yeah, I think it finds actually a really nice balance, if I can say, because it feels completely different. But I think because the shape is more man than beast, it does have like this nice harkening back to that original Talbot version of the Wolfman
Right.
as well. Like that's something that I found really, really worked for me. I guess the other thing that I really responded to as well is we talked a little bit about it last night, the foundation of this film
Right.
being built on this family drama. And I feel like this film works just as well as a family drama before that terror starts creeping in
Right.
as well. I know you co-wrote this film with your wife.
Yes.
Can you talk about like finding that as the foundation and building a horror on top of a like family drama film?
yeah, I mean, I think you always have to do that. Certainly with Invisible Man, you could have taken the invisibility out of it and still had a workable thriller about a woman trying to
Yeah.
escape a past relationship, you know. So it's good to have that. You know, I remember a quote, I think maybe it was Judd Apatow. Somebody said that you should be able to take the gags out of a comedy and still have a
movie.
functional drama and
Yeah.
movie. And I think that applies to horror. You know, you could make a version of The Shining where they were just in the hotel and the marriage was strained and he was losing his mind. And you add the supernatural elements to this domestic violence and this drama, and it becomes, you know, it transcends drama and becomes this like iconic horror film. And so I do think about that. You know, I don't like to overanalyze something when I'm writing it, but a lot of times I feel like the horror elements are window dressing but you need to build that house, and the house is the characters, what they're going through. And, you know, what the old screenwriting rule, put your characters up a tree and throw rocks at them, like put them through hell, right?
Yeah.
That's drama. You know, I'm throwing really big rocks at them, horror rocks, you know, and putting them through physical violence.
They're quite
and terror.
sharp, these rocks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But, you know, emotional violence can be just as big. You know, sometimes you'll watch a drama where someone will, if you're invested in it, someone will say something cruel to someone and it just cuts you so deep, you know. It depends. With horror, the things that you're doing are literally cutting.
Yeah.
Not metaphorically cutting.
But I think that's it. You need the literal for the metaphor to work, in my opinion. And that's why genre cinema really resonates with me.
Yes, I believe so. I mean, that's cinema history. It's funny, I was talking with a friend the other day. A lot of times, these sort of competently made adult dramas that win lots of awards, they're not always remembered. You know, I can think of a few movies recently that won a lot of Oscars, but I can't see people carrying the films with them.
Yeah.
Whereas a film like The Substance will get chopped up and turned into a meme, and it's a T-shirt. It'll stay with people.
It's their birthday theme for the next few years.
Yes,
you know?
it's a Halloween costume. It's this, like, that's cinema history.
Yeah.
I always feel like the visceral is what will make the highlight reel. When
Absolutely.
when the aliens come down to our smoking husk of a planet covered in rubble, and they're sifting through the wreckage and thinking about, you know, who were these human beings when they existed? When they get to the cinema part of our existence, I think what'll be on the highlight reel will be the visceral. It's not those adult moments. It's Gene Kelly swinging around a lamppost in the rain.
Yeah.
It's Elliot and E.T. riding past the moon. It's you know, it's Peter O'Toole screaming, you know, no prisoners.
Yeah.
It's Jaws jumping. These
It's
visceral...
Danny DeVito penguin spewing black bile from
black
his
bile,
mouth.
right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Like, I think about that all the time. It's when it's not that, you know, dialogue-driven adult dramas don't have a place. They do, but I think about the visceral. I think about the image that stays. The image that stays is where I start when I'm writing a script. That's where I start.
Yeah.
And I like to have, before I actually start typing the script, I like to have a notepad with at least 5 images that will stay with you, at least in my opinion.
Your North Stars.
They're my
like,
North Stars. Sometimes I don't even know what the image means yet.
Yeah.
Like with Invisible Man, I had an image of a woman being dragged around a kitchen.
Yeah.
And unseen. I approached Wolfman the same way.
Yeah.
You know? I had an image of a little girl trying to talk to her dad, and he's just staring at her, not answering, so disfigured. All these images, you know, that's how you build it for me.
And behind that image, I think that Christopher Abbott performance is just sensational. Because I really want to talk to you about, like, I guess the physicality of that transformation from a performance perspective. Could you kind of talk about that? Because it's so, like, you were using the words like degenerative, but also like becoming a bit more primal. How do you direct that performance, and how do you kind of keep track of where his physicality should be?
Well, you know, it's just a matter of keeping track of the script in your mind.
Yeah.
You know, you often make a film out of sequence, so you really need to check in with the text and say, where are we here? Also, a great actor is really good. Often the actor will say, as in the case of Chris, no, I don't think so. I think we're here. And so I trust, you know, a great actor.
Did it take a lot of workshopping to find how he should be performing that? Like
Yeah.
finding that shape of that character, that movement?
Yeah, there were a lot of Zoom calls, and he was in New York and I was in LA, and he had a movement coach and he was developing a walk.
Yeah.
And then, he would be developing a sound and the way he would breathe. And he didn't necessarily want to be showing it all to me. He would give me hints of it.
Yeah.
But he has this thing where he wants to save it all for between action and cut.
Yeah.
Chris, he has that theater approach. He comes from the theater and he wants to leave it on the stage.
Yeah.
And so he would say to me, like, let me just wait. And I trusted him. He was like, just wait to see what I do. So I didn't feel like I could say, hey, get up and give me a demonstration of what the Wolfman walks like. But
It's not something you snap into.
Yeah, I mean, maybe some directors would be like, no, I need to see what you're going to do. I don't want to put it on film before I know. I just trusted Chris.
Yeah.
He has great taste. He's a tasteful person, and he's has a good bullshit radar. So everything has this authenticity to it. The thing I like most about the film is the little things that he did before he went crazy, because it's subtle, but if you go back and watch the film, there's actually an on-ramp to it. Sometimes it's very subtle, like it could be a movement or a breath or a walk, but it's all there slowly.
Yeah. Oof, I love to hear that. I guess the last thing I want to talk to you about before we move on to your weekly choices as well is Upgrade, Invisible Man, now Wolfman. This is your third collaboration with one of Australia's great character actors, Benedict Hardy. Is this
amazing.
guy your lucky charm, or do you just have like a freaky character written in your script and you go, I know who's going to play this fella?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, he's a great guy, first of all. He's so great to work with, and he's a brilliant actor.
Yes.
He just...
In equal measure, he's both of those things.
I know, and he really blew me away with Upgrade. What he did, that was the first time I'd ever worked with him, and that's when I met him, and I was just astounded by what he did with this character of Fisk in Upgrade.
Yeah.
And he had so much fun with it. And I feel like now he is my good luck charm. You know,
You've got a job for life now.
Yeah, he's my Ted Raimi. You know,
Yeah.
I need him. You know,
Yeah.
and I don't want to necessarily relegate him to cameos every time. I'd love to give him a bigger role that he could sink his teeth into, but I don't know if I could make a film at this point without Benedict in there. It would feel wrong.
Yeah. You need some familiarity on set, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I love that. I love watching Coen Brothers films and seeing the same names in the credits.
Yeah.
They've built this little team, this traveling circus. I aspire to that. I
Yeah.
would love to build a company.
Yeah.
And I've got a couple of members in my company already. You know, Stefan Duccio and Andy Canny, Benedict Hardy. So I'm in the early days, but I'm building it.
That's good. That's what I want to hear. I want to see all these guys done on different prosthetics, different wigs, different makeups. That's what we need.
Yep.
Well, that's Wolfman. It's such a fun film. It's out now in cinemas. I
you.
encourage people to go see it because it's really, the thing that surprised me most, it's really gross. Like it's true body horror that makes you squirm, makes you squeal, makes you howl. I'll say that.
Good.
Makes you howl.
You can do it.
But it's a lot of fun. Any other final thoughts you want to share on Wolfman?
Nothing really. Just
leave it to the screen.
Just leave it on the screen. You know, don't go in with any expectations, or, you know, a lot of times today, you know, thanks to the internet, there's a lot of analysis of a movie before it comes out.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, dissecting every detail of every teaser. I would say, see if you can forget about all that and just go in and, you know, enjoy it.
Yeah, I'm not a trailer guy, so I went in pretty blind.
Oh, I love that. I love that you did that.
I was disturbed. I was disturbed by it. I had such a good time with it.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I used it was me and a couple of other critics at the preview, and we came out and go, that was grotty. I didn't expect it to be so grotty. I loved it.
Good.
Weekly.
Well, let's get into your weekly choices. We've sent you through the
Absolutely.
horror section. So we'll talk about a couple of movies that I think would have inspired you in some way on this one. Your first film, where should we go first? Ooh, yes.
Fly.
From David Cronenberg, it is The Fly, the great body horror classic.
Horror.
I mean, to me, the inspiration is quite clear. Like the way that you transform, it's all there on the screen. I actually rewatched this the other day, and I'll tell you my immediate thought from seeing it all over again. It's that pure cinematic poetry of imaginative gore, the craft of prosthetics, and the horrifyingly mangled flesh.
Yes.
And it's all come together.
All Cronenberg's obsessions.
Yeah.
Sex and death and bodily dismemberment. Like
bubbling flesh, it's all there.
I love it. I mean, I just love this movie. This is actually the Fly Ultimate Collection. So
that's all of them.
It contains all the Fly movies, The Fly, Return of the Fly, and The Curse of the Fly. Then you get The Fly and The Fly 2. The Fly 2 is an interesting one because, directed by Chris Wallace. It's not as good as the original Fly, but it has this incredible almost cruelty to it. It's like the dog in the pit and then the guy nasty. At the end. It's a nasty movie,
Somehow it can out nasty one of the most nasty films
exactly.
ever. But I guess The Fly has that softness of like you said, when talking about the foundation of a film, The Fly works as a romantic drama or a relationship drama first, and then you've got the horror that creeps in and surrounds all of that.
Yes, exactly. Famously produced by Mel Brooks, who brought in Cronenberg, and I think Cronenberg did his own draft of the script that another screenwriter had written, and I've read the Cronenberg draft and the draft not written by him, and you can see those Cronenberg obsessions working their way in there. It just works. It holds up, and the practical effects are so incredible. It's when you watch things in 4K, they can be kind of unflinching. A lot of things that were hidden by film are suddenly vividly visible. So maybe you can see the suit that he's wearing or whatever, but it works.
Yeah. What do you think is the importance of favoring the practical? Because at your film as well, it's like so practical. That transformation looks so real. It feels so tangible. What do you think is the importance of favoring that side of filmmaking?
Well, it's all based on preference, but I think people who love movies love the practical effects. A lot of times it's based on nostalgia. We grew up with this, but I think that it's how you deploy it. Everything is how you use it. I've seen a lot of movies, without naming names, where the CGI seemed quite lazy, quite rushed. I've seen $300 million movies where you're like, that was the best. Like, this key you've got going right here is better than some of the ones I've seen
in some
superhero movies. And I'm like, how is that possible? Then you'll see a film like Dune, and Denis Villeneuve's, he's very artful where he uses the CGI. The way he mixes it and shoots practical elements to sit in the front of it, it's layered.
Yeah.
So
that's what we do here. It's why I've got those tapes
in front
of the
green tapes,
screen.
But he's deploying CGI in a very tasteful way.
Yeah.
And when you see a film like that, you realize it's not visual effects in and of themselves that are somehow inauthentic, or it's who's behind it and how much they care. Is it a crutch? Or is it adding to the art form? What Denis Villeneuve does in Dune and in Arrival is use it in a way where it's seamless and you're not taken out of the story. You're in there, and he knows when it should look. He'll put something out of focus.
Yeah.
It's not about how shiny
it have to be
it
pristine,
looks.
yeah.
It's pristine. No, it's about looking at the frame and believing that's there.
Yeah.
So it's when you can, the danger is when you can do anything, nothing means anything. So sometimes if I'm watching a scene of an alien race wiping out Manhattan or something, it has a numbing effect on me because I'm aware that those things aren't really on screen. So if you can find a way to tie the practical but these movies didn't have the CGI option. The Fly was 1986, so the art form here is at its best. I've seen plenty of practical effects in movies from the 80s that didn't get there. They didn't have the artistry of Chris Wallace or Rick Baker. But when you see people who are masters of their craft, it still holds up.
Do you remember the
it's
first
very
time you
important.
saw The Fly, the Cronenberg Fly?
Yes, it was not in the theaters. It was probably on TV.
Wow.
You know, I used to just watch a lot of things.
Interspersed with ads.
Yeah, interspersed with ads, totally censored.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then
I
finally,
can't imagine who would be buying ad space on that film.
I know.
There'd be some rotten things just seeing popping up.
It's, you know, it's funny. I would watch a lot of films on TV and I would record it from the TV and keep watching them. And then eventually, you know, you start graduating up. Now I have, I think I have a 4K copy of this. Is this 4K?
I think that's
Is it
just Blu-ray, yeah.
I just love it so much.
Yeah.
Very good. So then what else have we got here?
Let's go to your next one.
The Shining.
The Shining, one of the true classics.
Horror.
You could say that Wolfman is like, story-wise, it's like combining these two movies.
It really is. It really is. And I think it's like that same thing we're talking about, those foundations. Like, The Shining, you could cut all the horror out of it and it would still work.
Exactly. Like, I mean, The Shining is a film that people cite often, so it's not exactly original, but it does something. It's still scary to me to this day. No matter how many times I see it, it scares me when he's in the corridor on his trike and he gets up to open the door to room 237 and the key's hanging in the door. If I'm watching it at night alone, or if I'm, you know, go to bed after watching it, it really disturbs me. The film has a power. It's fantastic, and I love that this. I'm looking at the special features here. The Vivian Kubrick documentary, The Making of The Shining, which I love so much.
It's such a great insight as well to just see the film from how a film like that is made, because you hear all these stories about like it's an unpleasant experience, this film, but when you're seeing, you go, no, there's something about it. And I think partly like what really makes The Shining work, obviously Jack Nicholson's phenomenal in it. It's like one of his great performances. But I think what Kubrick really nails is what is just as important as the monster performance is the scared performances reacting to the monster.
Yes.
And Shelley Duvall is just sensational in this film.
She's so good. I mean, she's the heart of the film, isn't she? I think, you know, with her unfortunate, you know, passing recently, and people are really starting to give her her due. Like, she really held that film together. And it's, you know, that Vivian Kubrick documentary, there's a lot of honesty there. You see, I always remember that moment where Vivian says something to her and Stanley says, "Don't be nice to Shelley."
Yeah.
And it's you know, that people have accused him of misogyny or dealing with Shelley Duvall differently than Jack Nicholson. And the film, that documentary, it's not exactly flattering. You do see Stanley Kubrick kind of yelling at her, and people ask, is there a means to an end? Was he trying to get her into such a frenzied state? I believe that filmmaking should always... I never want anyone to suffer mentally or physically to make a film. I'm still trying to make it fun. Even if the movie itself is harrowing, I want people to enjoy the experience of making it. So there are parts of that are tough to watch. But there's just no doubting that the finished movie has a power to it.
It does feel dangerous when you watch this film. Like every time I watch it, I think I appreciate it more. It still retains that fear for me every time I revisit it.
Yes, for sure. And, you know, there's some... I think these two movies were the two sort of North Stars for me when I was doing Wolfman.
Yeah.
Like, you can see the elements of this and the, you know, 3 family members in an isolated area. Like, you can see these two things combining. But, yeah, so those would be my picks. They, you know... Look, they're not the most original horror picks, but they are related to Wolfman.
They are related
makes a lot of sense. We could go through these discs, though.
We could always do that.
You know, let me see what you got here.
We've got a few more things here on the
Around
table.
Midnight. Oh, I mean, this movie, Miami Blues. I actually love this movie.
Yeah.
It is so funny. I love the Fred Ward character.
Yeah.
And just the opening, as soon as it opens with like Spirit in the Sky, that sort of riff.
Yeah.
You just know you're in for a treat. And this is back when Alec Baldwin was just like...
He was like that,
feral,
destined to be a movie star as well, but with that edge, with like a little bit of heat behind it or something.
Yeah.
The juice is weird.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. I remember Jennifer Jason Leigh pitching him. She's like, I want a nice house with white picket fence. And he just starts laughing at her, and he says, "How about we just cut to the happily ever after part?"
Yeah.
But if you remember was it Fred Ward? He lost his teeth when he was in the movie. Yeah. This movie is really a lost classic. I believe isn't it? It is. It's based on a book.
Is it not Leonard? Is it Elmore Leonard?
Is it Elmore Leonard? Is it?
No, maybe it's not.
In that vein. It's like one of those Florida noir authors.
It might be right.
I feel
on
like
the
if
back.
this was the Tarantino podcast, he'd
we'd
just
know
have
it straight away.
I'm a terrible.
Yeah, I didn't have my research ready for.
Do the Joe Rogan thing.
Let's find it now.
Let's go there.
All right, here we go. I've got my computer open.
So I can fill the silence. You will see with this Alec Baldwin at his ferocious best in his early days.
Charles Wilford is the author.
It's the author. Okay. And I never read the book, but I couldn't. This was the era where cult movies were in an interesting place, and this was the type of film I just loved. I loved undiscovered cult movies.
God, listen to these titles: Cockfighter, Miami Blues, The Woman Chaser, and The Burnt Orange Heresy.
Oh my God!
My gosh, you got to pick up some of those books, Lee.
Absolutely, I will. I'm just looking through your other ones just in case.
These are all my little offcuts that we leave on the table.
Oh, offcuts. So some of them are
There we go. There's a bit of a Wolfman there.
Raw. Wow, is that the movie about Tippi Hedren's farm?
Yes.
Oh yeah, you just see the tiger like sleeping in bed with looking for Alibrandi.
That's my favorite movie ever. That's my number one.
Favorite ever?
Yeah, my favorite ever.
I haven't seen it in so long, but you saying that makes me want to revisit it.
Yeah, it's just like I'm Greek, I grew up in Sydney, and that's the movie that I reflect on and go, that's what my life feels like. And when I watch it now, it feels like looking at a family photo album.
Yes, it's so indicative of a certain time, isn't it? Look at this, with the hip soundtrack featuring Killing Heidi, Spiderbait, and Lowtel.
We got Lowtel on the soundtrack.
As a cast member of Recovery, I can tell you that those...
you would have done a lot of coverage around that.
Deer Hunter. You know what was a big movie in the VHS era for me was House Party. Remember House Party?
Is that... No, I was thinking Bachelor Party, but yes, I know House Party.
House Party was... it was Kid and Play, right?
Yeah.
They went through like...
I've actually never seen House Party.
I'll put
it on tonight, mate.
You got to see it. I'm trying to think of another Australian film in the looking for Alibrandi.
Well, there was Garage Days around the same time with much of the same cast.
Can I tell you a story about Garage Days? Of course. I came... It was between me and one other guy to get the role of the guitarist.
Wow. And was it specifically Kit Gurry?
No, it was the other guy. I think his name was Brett. He played the guitarist. And of course, I was in love with The Crow, and Dark City.
Of course,
Alex Proyas was like the Australian director. So my agent calls me and says, "You've got an audition for this Alex Proyas movie." I died inside, and I dressed myself up like a rock and roller, and I went to the audition in Melbourne, and I did it, and then they called me back, and then they called me back again, and then they flew me up here to Sydney, and I went to the Greg Apps casting studio at Fox, the old Fox Studios, now Disney Studios. And the guy came out. He tortured us. He came out. There's me and one other guy sitting there.
Who, Proyas?
The Greg Apps, the casting director. He walked out and said, "Well, it's down to the two of you.
No,
it's the toss of a coin." So inside,
just throw a knife in between you.
I know, break a pulky in half. Last man standing. So, and I swear this is true. I went so far. I dressed up for the role, which the other guy didn't. And you're always eavesdropping on what the guy's doing and. So sure enough, I do the audition. Days go by. I haven't heard anything. Then I get a call from my agent. I could instantly tell from his tone of voice.
The atmosphere of the phone being picked up on the other end.
Just the way he said, he's like, "Hey, mate." I was like, shit. I hung up the phone.
Yep.
And I called James Wan. And I was so bummed about not getting this role in this movie. I said, fuck this. We're going to make our own movie with our own money.
No way.
We're going to make a movie for... $7,000. It's going to be our Blair Witch. We're going to shoot it. We're starting tomorrow. And that's where Saw started. Garage Days is directly responsible. God knows what I'd be doing right now if I had gotten that role. And the movie didn't end up, it didn't end up, I think, getting a lot of attention.
No, but it's a cult favorite still, Garage Days.
Well, it's funny how when you're an actor, you're so needy. This panel of jurors needs to approve you. You can't practice your craft unless you are anointed by some external. What I love about writing is you don't need anyone's permission to get started. You just write. And so Saw was born out of frustration. It was Garage Days that did it.
Wow. I cannot believe that it was Garage
Garage
Days, the direct lead up.
I called James right after I hung up the phone. Dude. And I think it took us at least 6 months to come up with the idea.
Wow. I think you've just programmed a double bill. That'll happen somewhere, Garage Days and Saw, and see if there's a connective tissue between the two.
Well, here's a VHS copy of Citizen Kane, a film that still holds up.
Yes, so, that was found in the street somewhere.
I know. But this thing, I guess, now it's this nostalgic object, even DVDs, I guess, these days. But true nostalgia for me is the videotape as an object.
You get that wiggle of the projection on the back of the TV.
Oh, yeah, exactly. I mean, they weren't good quality. It was not a good quality image, nor was it good quality sound coming off these things, but it's all you had. What a great film Last Crusade is.
Yeah, I rewatched it recently. I liked it more than I ever have. Like, it just really connected with me this time.
Yeah.
I think it's the passing of time. Before I give you your recommendation, Lee, I actually want to ask you one more thing, because we were almost talking about it with The Shining, the idea of a scared performance, because I think it's like so interesting about like directing it. In this one, we've got Julia Garner, Matilda Firth, and in particular, I love the young Zach Chandler. I think the way you kind of elicit those scared performances was just, it feels right there up on the screen. Can you talk about directing performance in that way?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, telling someone to be scared, it's usually you're pushing them up and ramping them up. So sometimes the take you end up using is the one you say, okay, we've got it. Now, just for fun, give me one at a 12.
Yeah.
Like, go really, and then actors tend to think that it's like, I remember Elizabeth Moss saying to me on the set of Invisible Man, I was like, it was good, but can we go even more scared? Like, and she's like, oh, you want a clown performance?
Yeah.
And I was like, and she said to me at the premiere, she came up to me and said, you were right. Like, all this stuff that I thought was too big, clownish, it's what suits the movie. So yeah, oftentimes it's just about prodding actors to get out of their subtle zone and go big with horror.
Oof. I mean, it really works, in particular Invisible Man. I remember seeing a review. God, I'd love to know who said this, because I've thought about it so much. They described it as a Jenna Rollins performance in an Alfred Hitchcock film.
Oh, wow.
And I just thought about that quote for that film for so long. Maybe it was Matt Zola Seitz or someone.
Yeah.
And just always stuck with me, because I thought it was just such a great way to categorize exactly why that film works.
Oh, that's great. That makes me feel good. Yeah.
I'll find
Elizabeth
it for you.
is powerful in that film.
Yeah.
She's the type of actor that makes the whole film better. She, you're a great actor can improve screenwriting. They could take a line that's maybe just a throwaway line and turn it into the Oscar clip. That's the power she has.
Staff pick.
Well, it's time for me to build those stakes up. I'm going to recommend
Let's do this.
I mean, you're picking up films off the desk with no prompt, being ready to talk about them.
I'm just ready.
So I feel danger right now. My life is on the line trying to recommend you a movie you haven't seen.
It is.
So I went deep. I've gone avant-garde. I want to give you something specific, and a film that I thought that I think that could excite you and benefit you in some way. So I know you've done Wolfman, you've done Invisible Man. I want to look at maybe one you've not touched yet. So I was thinking vampiric Dracula. And what I've gone down to is this film that I just discovered, I just watched. It's this meta avant-garde cinema, documentary, essay cinema. It's almost redefined what I think is possible with all of those elements together. It's a Spanish film called CUADECUC VAMPIR. Have you heard of this?
I have not.
Art house.
This, I've got a prop of it here for you as well. This is a film about the making of Jess Franco's Count Dracula. And Jess Franco, of course,
It's a fictional reimagining of the making of that movie.
No, it's actually the director in 1970, Per Portobello, suggested to Jess Franco that he create a film about the production of Jess Franco's Count Dracula. So they're filming two films simultaneously. So it's a behind-the-scenes documentary, but the way that's presented is in super high contrast, black and white. And there's no sound throughout the film for most of it. But there's these kind of creeping sound design elements, this kind of droning score, and it almost retells the story of Dracula in its bare bones state.
But it's very much behind the scenes.
Behind the scenes. So interspersed of like the kind of bare bones essay version of Dracula, it almost feels like Guy Madden. Like I feel like Guy Madden would have been very inspired by this film for his films like Gimli Hospital and stuff, or his Green Fog, his telling of Vertigo. And with this film, it's like this really, it almost feels more like Carl Theodor Dyer's Vampire more than it does any kind of Dracula story, the way it looks, the way it feels. But interspersed like this really cold telling of Dracula, where you can kind of go, everyone knows the story of Dracula, you're seeing it unfold in a new way. Interspersed through that, you're seeing how the film's being made, and it almost becomes Jess Franco, the director of that film, is the vampire sucking the blood out of Dracula as it's being made.
Wow.
And then interspersed through that, you're seeing them, the way that they lay in the cobwebs, like they've got that there's almost like this gun that shoots cobwebs out, and you're seeing them lay it on everything. You're seeing them put the scenes together. You're seeing Christopher Lee behind the scenes. And what really like felt so resonant to me, the way this film ends, is the only time you hear voice is Christopher Lee talking directly to camera at the point in the film where in Dracula should be extinguished and should be dying. It's Christopher Lee reading out the passage from the novel of Dracula dying and his thoughts, like kind of editorializing around it.
I'd love this. I think this is, you know what, this would make a great companion piece for this is, there is a film that when David Lynch was making Blue Velvet, a young German filmmaker wrote to him, this is in 1984, and said, I would love to document you making your latest film. I'll just be there. And David Lynch wrote back a very short typed letter that said, I agree.
Wow.
And so he came over from Germany with a camera, and there is a feature-length film, I think it's called Blue Velvet Revisited, but it is very similar to what you're describing. It's
a separate work of art.
A separate work of art. It has this droning, dreamlike soundtrack, and it's a lot of silent footage of the movie being made. You just see them making Blue Velvet. And then every now and again, you'll get a sort of out-of-context interview with David Lynch where he talks about the making of the film. I think you would really like it.
Yeah, this sounds right well up my alley.
Yeah, if you want to get a hold of it, get the 4K edition of Blue Velvet, the most recently, and it comes on that as an extra. But it would pair very well with this.
I think so, yeah. The other thing I'll tell you about this, Pier Portobello, the director, he's this avant-garde cinematic explorer from 60s in Spain, and he was very critical of the Franco regime, and he even had his passport revoked because he took a Louis Buñuel film that he made to Cannes that was criticizing the Franco regime. So when he came back, they like revoked his passport because they were upset by it. Then when Spain became a democracy, he became an elected senator for the Catalan government. Wow. So he's like the real deal.
He's the guy.
You kind of see, I mean, he's probably, he's criticizing a different Franco regime on the making of Jess Franco's Count Dracula. But I think you'll get something out of it. It's a weird one. It might take some searching for you to find, but there's a new Blu-ray out there.
I love watching people make films.
Yeah.
So it doesn't need context. I don't need interviews or commentary to tie it together. I can just sit and watch people
this one doesn't
make
have
it.
those.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's great. Thank you. You had nothing to be nervous about. I had not heard of this, and I'm very keen to watch it now.
Wow. I live to recommend another day.
Another one.
Well, Lee, thank you so much for joining me here in the Last Video Store.
Thanks for having me.
Truly,
it's really a pleasure.
Oh my God, no, the pleasure's mine. I'm taking it away from you. The pleasure was all mine having you here. But it's such a dream to chat to you about horror films and films in general, everything Miami Blues. You can take them all. But thank you so much, man. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. And I wish I had one of these in my house, really.
Oh, yeah.
That's my dream, is to have the video, to have my
garage
collection basically in a video store.
Well, let's go through your picks one more time. Your new release, of course, is Wolfman. It's in cinemas now. Yep. People can watch it there, or they can come rent it from the store if they want to. Then we've got The Fly from David Cronenberg. Yep. We've got Kubrick's The Shining. And now we've got Pier Portobello's CUADECUC Vampire, which I have been trying to say all day long. If I got it wrong, please
you
punish
put a
me.
spin on it like a waiter in a Spanish restaurant in George Street trying to pronounce the night's specials.
Well, don't order this one.
Paella.
Well, thank you so much, Leigh. You got to come back in 7 days and return those. But
okay. Well, look, I was never good with that. I racked up a lot of fines at Video Busters. I'm probably still wanted by the Australian Federal Police for that. So,
well, we're engineering a man to come hunt you down.
Yeah, exactly. The whole thing is a sting operation to get me, isn't it? There is no podcast.
Yeah, when I signed you up, I did see that you had a few wanted notices out there in Video Store land.
Why is my computer pinging?
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
The last video store.
So that was our chat with Leigh Whannell, the hero, the icon, the modern master of horror. Love him. What a great chat, dude, right?
Oh, he was amazing. He was above and beyond.
Oh,
How
man.
good was his stories?
Dude, when he's like pulling apart the tapes and going, oh, what about, and I bring up Garage Days. He's like, actually, Garage Days is the movie that changed my life. I'm like, whoa, whoa.
Yes. And can we please make this Garage Days Saw double bill happen?
Dude,
come on.
Have to.
That would be fantastic.
And there'll be a clip of that. If you're listening to this and you want to see him go crazy, talk about Garage Days, that'll be on our Instagram, Last Video Store Batuta, or you can watch the full thing on YouTube. If you haven't checked out the show on YouTube, you can see what the Last Video Store actually looks like, and you can see how freaking hot I am to be called Sexy Lexi by that hairy beast at the start of the episode.
Thank you, everyone, for the objectification we asked for. Appreciate that.
We're getting a few hottie comments in our little videos these days. I'm enjoying that a lot. It's making me feel powerful and hunky.
Sex sells.
Sex sells. Watch us on YouTube. Interact with us. I don't know what I'm saying here. But also, do check out Wolfman's in cinemas now. You haven't seen it yet?
No, I unfortunately couldn't attend the premiere because I was traveling. I was in transit. So I was on a highway.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I wouldn't have missed it for the world. But I am going to. Me and all my siblings and our partners went to Nosferatu. Yes, exactly. We went to see Nosferatu a few weeks ago, and I want to get that gang back together to see Wolfman. I think it's perfectly in line with our cinema goings. So.
A grot like you will get a lot out of this, mate. It's gross. I had a good time with this film.
Can't wait.
So check out Wolfman in cinemas now, and check me out on Letterboxd. I put the lists up of all these chats, so if you want to go through them and find them, click on them, add the films to your watch list, that's an easy way to do it. I put them up the same day the episode comes out, and thank you very much. Oh, and one more thing. My comedy festival show with Zachary Ruane has just gone on sale. Get the show notes, the links. We're doing Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide, Brisbane, full tour of the show called Refused Classification, where I play Margaret Palmer and Zach plays David Stratton, and it's about the most controversial thing that's ever happened in Australian cinema. It's a live documentary, basically, about this huge incident that will blow your mind. It's about
you got to see it.
Free speech, classification, censorship in Australia. If you love movies, you will love this show. And if you love me, of course you're going to come.
Of course
it's me for an hour.
What could be better?
In the flesh, wearing a wig.
Yes, come for the wig alone, I have to admit. The wig's good.